Tēnā koutou katoa. Atamarie and welcome to this morning's online hui, hosted and facilitated by PANNZ and Auckland Live. Ko Dolina Wehipeihana tōku ingoa, he uri ahau no Ngāti Tukorehe, me Ngāti Raukawa. My name's Dolina and I'm delighted to be here this morning with you all to facilitate today's conversation with a fantastic panel, including Victor Rodger, Juanita Hepi and Alice Canton. I'm going to begin today's session with a karakia. Me karakia tātou. Tū taua mai I runga, tū taua mai I raro, tū taua mai I roto, tū taua mai I waho. Kia tau ai te mauri tū, te mauri ora ki te katoa, haumie huie, tāiki e. Kia ora anō and welcome. Thank you to all of you who are joining us on Facebook Live and YouTube this morning for taking time within week 2 of lockdown level 3. It's wonderful to have you all here with us and we're really looking forward to the conversation today. I'm beaming in this morning from the temporary office in my shed here on a sunny day in Tāmaki Makaurau. It's wonderful to be here. There's many more sounds in my neighbourhood this morning, so I do apologise if you hear the neighbours digging and chainsaw action. But again, it is wonderful to be able to be here and share this space online with all of you. As I was saying earlier, today is week 2 of lockdown level 3. The gears have started cranking again. Maybe you've been able to get a coffee from the local cafe and our world has started to open up again to local business. What does it mean for us in the arts? Creative projects are underway. Creative New Zealand have already announced the first successful funding grants from their Creative New Zealand Emergency Response Package. However, our venues and our borders are still closed and there's still uncertainty as to when we will be able to gather again for performances, but also for rehearsals. And there's lots of questions around what are the guidelines for how we can do this within the different alert levels and with the current social distancing requirements. As we know, independent artists and project-based arts companies were hit hard by COVID-19. Artists had shows that were cancelled mid-season or in the midst of rehearsals, and practitioners whose upcoming projects, gigs and concerts dried up one by one, both locally and internationally, and rapidly. So here we are 5 weeks on from those crushing first days. And this morning, we're really excited to be able to hear from 3 independent artists as to what were the effects on their practice at this time, how they've navigated lockdown, and their thoughts and insights on how we might emerge from this space. So on the panel this morning, really excited to have artist and educator Juanita Hepi, writer and producer Victor Rodger, and theatre artist Alice Canton. And as per our other hui, we'd love to have a conversation with all of you who are watching out there and joining us online. Please, if you have any questions or thoughts or ideas that come up from the conversation, just type them into the comments below and we have a team behind the scenes here who will collect your questions and feed them through to me to our panellists. So, without any further ado, I'd love to welcome and introduce our first panellist for this morning, Juanita Hepi. Juanita is of Kai Tahu, Rangi, Ngātiwai and Ngāti Mutunga descent. She's a multidisciplinary artist, educator and researcher, living and working on her tūraka waiwai in Aotearoa, Christchurch. Recently returned from a tour of America, Canada and Hawaii, where she engaged with Indigenous leaders and their storytelling practices. Juanita arrived home in time to direct Takirua's newest te reo Māori touring play Ngā Manu Rōreka by Apirana Taylor, which had to be cancelled partway through due to COVID-19. And she was due to travel to Toi Amai Papa to the Festival of Pacific Arts in Hawaii in June. And like most Christchurch residents, she is for a 3rd time having to re-navigate the creative environment and economy of our arts. Kia ora, Juanita, welcome.
Kia ora Dolina, ka mihi atu ki a koutou. Ko te poho tamatia te mauka, ko whakaraupo te moana, ko wheke te whare tipuna, nō tau tahi ahau, ko Kai Tahu tōku iwi. Kia ora koutou. First of all, I think I just want to give a big shout out to PANNZ, to Auckland Live, to Creative New Zealand for allowing this platform for us to come and have a kōrero. And it's really great to be alongside 3 inspirational storytelling extraordinaires, Dolina, Victor and Alice. Victor and Alice, there's a bit of a Christchurch connection there as well, so ka mihi atu kia koutou. And I think my final mihi, I just want to mihi to those people who have lost loved ones during this time. We down in Ōtautahi have had a few tangi, and having to navigate that space has been really challenging, and also has brought us together in a new way. So I want to mihi to those people as well. I'm a theatre maker, producer, director, actor, educator here in Christchurch, where I was born, raised, had my children, and I whakapapa back here as well. To give you a little bit of context, I'm sitting in Aranui at the moment in my son's bedroom. My mum and her partner are upstairs. The children are running around outside. So like most of you in your bubbles, there's lots of things going on as we navigate kind of being in a bubble inside a bubble. What I mean by that is, as an independent theatre maker, my house is my workspace. And so when we went into lockdown the first time, although there was a sense of being with my children, which was really beautiful, there was also this navigation of how do I work as an independent theatre maker with all of this crazy chaos, going back to what Shona said last week, with all of this chaos going on around, how do you find the spaces where your energy is best utilised? So that's a little bit of context of where I am at the moment. Yeah, that's right, Dolina. We had Te Pō Ngā Manu Rōrika, the tour. They were in Auckland at the time that we pulled them, and Takirua have been really amazing with their response. As soon as we sort of went into rehearsal back in January, end of January, it was the first kōrero that we had. And although there was no scaremongering or panicking, it was that sense of what are the things that we may have to look at down the track, which actually happened. And I think for me particularly, I wasn't sure, none of us were really sure about what COVID would mean, and it has really been this crazy roller coaster where if you're in Christchurch, it's your third time, if you had been here for the earthquakes and then for the terrorism attack. So yeah.
Juanita, in terms of your practice, what are you working on at the moment, and how have you been adapting to this current crisis?
Yeah, great question. I think when I say multidisciplinary, I also mean I work across education. So I was meant to be taking workshops in schools. I also am a pretty active marae member. So all of our rūnaka hui have been cancelled, that sort of thing. So we're all working remotely now, online. And also we had FESPAC, Creative New Zealand and the Hawaii group just cancelled that, which was the right thing to do, and that was really early. I think probably the biggest for me now is working out where I'm going to put my energy, because I found that my work has actually increased. I'm also doing a master's as well in Māori Indigenous leadership, which is focused on storytelling. So it's where am I going to put my energy and how do I manage that? I particularly work with the community. I sort of have this framework that I work through when I am working with story. One of them is haura, so it's about our health. One of them is about succession planning. And so following these spaces, again, it's just about where do I put my energy, and how do I make sure that I'm getting everything I need as an artist as well. That's probably the hardest thing, I think. But on the other flip side of that is that there are a lot of artists out there in Christchurch, because we're quite siloed and we're just growing and building and developing. There's a lot of artists out there who are in that space where we were when the earthquake happened, where you're going, is this really what I want to do? And for me, having been through those three things, and I'm still acting, producing, directing, there's definitely a sense of there is a huge purpose in the mahi that we do. So yeah, I think that's where I'm at, Dol.
Kia ora. Thank you, Juanita. Yeah, I just want to really acknowledge what you've said there about in terms of this being something which has really made people question their purpose in the arts and do they belong, where do they belong, where is their community, who are they working with. I think for independent artists that in particular hits quite hard because you're perhaps alone in your house or in your own bubble, and where are those support networks for you as an independent. I'm really excited now to introduce our next panellist for this morning. Kia ora and welcome Victor Rodger. Victor is of Samoan and Scottish descent. He's best known as the award-winning playwright of works such as My Name is Gary Cooper, Black Faggot and Umalava. Through his theatre-producing entity F.C.C, he resurrected his cousin Tusiata Avia's one-woman play Wild Dogs Under My Skirt and put together a team who transformed it into a critically acclaimed 6-woman piece, which made history in January this year when it debuted off-Broadway in New York. Victor teaches the Māori and Pasifika Creative Writing Workshop at the International Institute of Modern Letters at Victoria University, and last week published a short story online called Donnie's Dialogue, which he proudly calls Absolute Filth. Kia ora, Victor, welcome.
Thank you, Dolina, and talofa lava, everyone. I'm coming to you in my fake fur from my apartment on Oriental Parade in Wellington. I just had 5 weeks down in my native Christchurch with my mother and my stepfather, and I flew back up on Saturday, largely inspired by the desire to wear this again. And it's been interesting getting back into the groove here. I mean, it's only been a couple of days, but yeah, interesting times, as we all know. As Dolina mentioned, I have a theatre producing entity called F.C.C. F.C.C stands for the Flow of Energy, creating platforms largely for Pasifika practitioners and connecting emerging practitioners with seasoned veterans. And F.C.C was born out of my frustration with seeing a lot of my particularly Pasifika mates not getting particularly meaty, complex roles, and me wanting to somehow facilitate them having experience with meaty, complex roles. Did that by doing a series of play readings and also producing a few plays. And from those play readings, had a tutu with my cousin Tusiata Avia's play Wild Dogs Under My Skirt, which used to be a one-woman show, as Dolina said, and then got turned into a 6-woman piece. Now that piece has had quite a successful run up and down the country, and then in January this year, played off-Broadway at the Soho Playhouse. January. It seems like a million years ago, but it's January. And we had a great time, and we got invited back, and because we won a award at the Soho Playhouse, and it was amazing and wonderful. And during PANNZ itself, got to see the Soho Playhouse artistic director, Darren Lee Cole. And as recently as March 15, that's the last time we emailed each other. Darren was saying, we were meant to fly over in Easter, and he was saying, yeah, let's maybe push it back a week. And, it's quite surreal how things escalated pretty much from about that point onwards. So Easter is not that far gone, and I think all of us that were thinking of going were actually grateful to be here. Even though we had been looking forward to going back, we are grateful to be here with our loved ones in New Zealand. So, it's been interesting thinking about what's next. I work as a writer across film and TV and theatre, do the occasional essay, and as Dolina said, filthy fiction when I have time. the film and the TV work is the stuff that has been sustaining me financially. That has sort of kept on going. Particularly, there's a lot of development, well, fingers crossed, there's a lot of development money out there. So that's been great. But, you know, the theatre stuff, like the trip to New York, obviously that is in limbo. And I was just about to write a piece for Toi Whakaari New Zealand Drama School that has been postponed. So all the theatre stuff just kind of stopped. And, you know, I've been busy with some of the TV stuff for the first couple of weeks, and then started to turn my attention towards, well, what can we do, this group of us that we're going to go to New York. So that comprises of essentially eight performers. And, you know, I came up with a program of work that I'm applying to Creative New Zealand for money for. Whether we get the money or not, who knows? I hope we do. But even if we don't, I'm pretty excited by the work that is on that program. How that will be performed in the future, who knows? We are living with a question mark, right? You know, and but I think we have to proceed as if something will happen. It has to, you know. Art's not going to stop because of a virus. It's just we just have to adjust to it. And one thing I thought a couple of weeks ago was, like, you know, we don't have to wait for funding to do stuff. And so I put together a little international play reading with me, a young Samoan writer that I've been mentoring in Oregon, and Ana Palapolataivao and Frankie Adams, who are two local actresses. And we just had a jam on Zoom. And it was great, you know, and it was, you know, I think I feel for a lot of the performers that aren't getting a chance to flex those muscles. And so, like I said, I've applied for that money, or going to apply for that money from CNZ. And even if we don't get it, I'm going to push ahead with that stuff, which is how F.C.C started in the beginning, with no funding and just doing it because we wanted to do it. So yeah, there's that. I have been really grateful for some of the other people and companies that have reached out in this period of time. I think maybe the first weekend of lockdown, no, not even the first weekend, like maybe one of the first days after lockdown, Centrepoint Theatre, Kate Louise Elliott at Centrepoint Theatre reached out, and she and the Centrepoint team came up with a cool little gig where they got 10 writers, matched them with 10 actors, and the writers had to write a monologue in 24 hours and the actors had to record them. I thought, what a terrific way to get a diverse group of people together and, one, give them some money, but also give them a bit of purpose, that purpose thing. And also got asked to write an essay about being on lockdown with my mum in Christchurch by Britomart, of all people. And that was really cool. What else? Oh, look, I just think in closing, I was saying before we went live that, you know, I got home on Saturday and I've just been Marie Kondoing the shit out of my apartment and having such a great time, smoothing down all my clothes with love, seeing what sparks joy and what doesn't. That's also applied to the work that I'm working on. What is sparking joy in me? And, you know, there's one gig in the TV world that I turned down. And I mean, I'm not really in a position where I can be turning down work, but I was just like, I'm not feeling that. And I would just be doing it for the money. Yes, I need it, but it's not sparking joy. So thank you, Marie Kondo. You helped me turn that down. That's me. Thank you.
Kia ora, Victor. Thank you. Again, I think that's something that I've heard and seen many people have been experiencing, is actually the reset. Like you were saying also, Juanita, that reset of what is important to me as an artist now and what do I want to spend my time on. what whakaaro do I want to share and with who, and where do I want to put my energy? So that what next is a big question, because how do you navigate and plan for what's next when there is an uncertain future? And how do you create an environment for yourself where you do have the ability to turn down work, when so often in the freelance space you're working so hard to navigate and make all the different projects work, whether you're creating your own work or working for other companies, and then suddenly for all of that whole rug to be pulled out from our independent sector, it means it's going to be a very, we're going to really need each other as we move forward into the future. Now I'd like to introduce our next panellist, Alice Canton. Kia ora, Alice. Alice is a theatre artist and performer, producing work under the artistic nom de plume White Mess. Alice is interested in social practice. She uses theatre as a vehicle to explore participation, political engagement, and community. She has had a very dynamic career over the last 15 years, which has expanded across arts, education, and advocacy. Alice has a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Sculpture from the University of Canterbury and a Bachelor of Performing Arts from Toi Whakaari New Zealand Drama School. Her favourite moment of lockdown so far has been discovering the Kingsland Community Orchard, which is only a stone's throw from her bubble. Kia ora, Alice.
Kia ora, Dolina. Wow, I just love hearing what has already been said by Juanita and Victor, and I feel very privileged to be invited to contribute in this space, so thanks for having me. I feel a bit lost about what to speak about. I thought I knew, but no, I'm not so sure, just from hearing what others have said. Yeah, I'm a bit lost, dolls. What should I speak to?
Well, Alice, I think, you know, there were a couple of articles which you contributed to in the early days of lockdown, one by the Spin-Off and one by Pantagraph Punch. And I think your experience is one which was shared by a lot of other independent artists, and you really at that time provided a voice. But it's quite hard to also be the lone voice that's out there. But one of the things, obviously, that you talked about was that you had a show that was mid-season, which you had to cancel. I wonder if you wouldn't mind sharing a bit about what actually happened for you at the start of lockdown in terms of your own performance season.
Yeah, so I guess as context, I had a show at the Basement, which was on, and I opened on the 10th, and as we know, by the 21st, it was pretty clear that we were moving into lockdown for that Monday. But I guess I want to say, like, kind of saw the writing on the wall, and I was anticipating that's where we were heading. But it was really hard to make that call because it was on my decision, and I like the autonomy of an artist being able to make the choice as to how they choose to present their work or in which context. But I think because the work was inviting strangers into a space to share themselves, it felt really irresponsible to do that at a time where we didn't know what was going on. So I made the choice to pull the show. I think at that stage, I guess the question was around the responsibility that artists have to do that, and like the weight of responsibility that carries, because I know venues are compromised because if they, I don't know, that whole kind of conversation around force majeure, are we going to get our deposits back and all that kind of stuff. My flatmate, Chris Parker, he had a work in Dunedin Fringe Festival, and people were planning to go to Edinburgh, and all this stuff was happening, and it was just that cusp where that decision making wasn't coming from upstairs. So that was challenging, but I guess what I didn't want was for that show to be like to become synonymous with like the show that got cancelled. sort of aware that I don't want to stigmatize my work. Being like, oh yeah, that's a show that was like, you had to cancel that show, instead of like, oh yeah, there's that work that's like social practice and experimental and like, you know, engaging with people and stuff. So but I spoke to the media. When you do that, you naturally and quite loudly and publicly stigmatize your own work. So that was probably a faux pas on my part. Yeah, so, but I guess beyond the work, I've been trying to think of this period more holistically, because yes, I'm an artist and my practice is me and I am my practice, but also, you know, like I've got family and I've got vulnerable family members, and I've been splitting my time between here and Melbourne over the last 12 months. So I had to make a choice to isolate here. So my boyfriend's in Melbourne at the moment and in a financially compromised position because of the industry that he works in. So although practice is really important, I'm also like, so is life. so is yeah, that kind of stuff. So I guess that's why I don't have so much clarity around what this means for me from an arts practice perspective, because yeah, it's not completely in my consciousness.
Thanks, Alice. I think that's a really good point that you make around, you know, and I guess you were talking about it too, Victor, in terms of the creative spark. Where does that come from? And perhaps for you, Alice, it's just a case of waiting for that moment when that creative step is ready to be made. But again, it's so difficult in the context of being an independent practitioner to know when to take the step or which direction to go. Yeah. And that's where we really kind of need each other.
Yeah, I was actually just yesterday was having a conversation with a friend who what she said really challenged me, and it's around the privilege of to make or not to make. So I feel like I've been trying to consciously resist the culture of productivity in this time, because everyone's making and everyone's showing and social media, and like that's great, and I will participate as an observer, but I'm trying to not I don't need to make right now. Yeah, like, and that I was kind of called out for that. Like, that's actually a privilege for you to say that, because you have a secondary income at the moment. Like I've got like a little job that I've been doing on the side, and like it's really like ruptured me in a way. Like, am I privileged because I don't earn 100% of my income through making work? And so therefore, is it a privilege for me to not make work right now because I can earn a crust doing something else? And it, like, I don't like to think of it as a privilege, because by earning a crust in that way, I've completely compromised my ability to make as well. So yeah, I'm kind of going through that in terms of that notion of productivity, yeah, and what that means.
Yeah, absolutely. The different roles that independent artists take on in order to be able to continue their practice, whether that's having a secondary job or devoting themselves fully to the arts, and what that means and how much effort that takes. Yeah, I just think independent artists are amazing and such an important part of our ecology. One question I had was just thinking about independent artists and how they might interface or intersect with, you know, the arts organisations, perhaps the Tōtara and Kahikatea organisations. Victor, you spoke about a project being initiated by Centrepoint, which was able to reach out to you. What do you think independent artists need or want from other organisations, venues, festivals, commissioning bodies? What could help at this time? Maybe I'll go over to you, Victor, first, because I can
unmute myself. Oh, am I unmuted? Oh, sorry, that was so dramatic, trying to unmute myself. They need money. I think it's as simple as that, however you frame it, you know, how that gets, yeah, and it's yeah, there's some questions around that too, in terms of like who decides that old chestnut, who gets to decide who gets the moolah. And you know, in a pre-COVID world, you know, i.e., you know, 3 months ago or whatever, one thing I always banged on about, or have always banged on about, is, you know, I always look at the top tier, the racial makeup of the top tier management and companies. How does it look? Normally it looks pretty generic, pretty homogenous, and that, I think that can't not help but inform how some decisions get made. And I guess I'm sort of going off on a tangent, but it's like, you know, one of the initial things posed when I got approached to do this was, how do you want the post-COVID world to look like? And I think it still remains, I want that top tier of management to look a lot more diverse than it is, because that will help shift some of the decisions that get made. You know, and I'm not saying any of these particular decisions have been made post-COVID, but there's always the danger that, particularly when we, you know, hashtag minorities, aren't at the table making the decisions, they sometimes get made for us with the best of intent, and it can just not be quite what we need. And this is a very specific Brown response to this. I don't know if Alice and Juanita agree, but yeah. I don't think that answered your questions, Lena. I went off on a bit of a rant.
I think that is an important tangent to go down though as well, and one that's certainly I've seen coming up on some of the Facebook conversations around the arts as well, is that decision making at this time, we're wanting to ensure that people are involved in the decisions that affect themselves. And I guess we can look at that particularly from a cultural perspective, but also for independent artists, what decisions are being made that affect your practice. And perhaps now is a time that we could share some things that as independents we might need, or how could an organisation like PANNZ or Auckland Live, for example, help the independent sector at this time? Maybe I'll throw over to you, Alice, because one conversation that we had before this panel started was around where is somewhere that independent artists can go for guidance, especially around that decision making around, you know, when the writing was on the wall, but actually there was no government decree yet that, you know, there'll be no gatherings. So we were all kind of muddling along together. Do you have any thoughts about that, Alice?
Yeah, I think my demand of the leaders of the sector is to communicate, and to like over communicate. And if you're talking too much, if you're telling us too much, then we'll just tell you, I'm saturated, just leave me alone. And I think the kind of deafening silence from many arts organisations and venues that we haven't heard from, they haven't touched base with us, you know, we care about those places. We have an emotional investment, and being invisible right now is like hyper visible. And I understand that organisations are in a compromised position because they may not know whether they're going to be open, or you know, like, fuck, maybe their ass is on the line and actually they're going to have to close. But us not knowing that as artists means that we move into this like really slippery slope of making a sort of we're going to make assumptions, and that's not helpful either. And then you sort of are on a wheel of churning possibilities of what if this, what if that. And I think instead of it being so I guess that for me is kind of like, for me is key. And I think the other thing is like I don't have a risk management structure in place, let alone a crisis management in place for this stuff. And when I needed guidance, I called Renee Liang. I was like, yo, you're a doctor. Should I do a show? Is that responsible? And she was like, it was awesome. Like, she was like, call me, babe, like, call me. And I did. And it was amazing. But like, that's a privilege for me to know a doctor that I can bloody call on, dial a friend, you know? You know, yeah, when it comes to like strategic decision making that we have to make as artists, it's like, we don't have a board. We don't have, you know, those types of high level decision making and thinkers at our fingertips. And so the venues and the companies become that to us. And when they're not talking to us, it's like, feels really scary. And I'm loving the comms that is coming out and the effort that's coming out from a lot of these organizations. I know that Basement, like Nisha Madden, is weekly. She's putting out these like weekly newsletters, and she voice records them as well, so you don't have to read the text. But I'm also getting these like generic marketing EDMs from some companies and organizations, and it's like, dude, I'm an artist. I've worked for your company before. Don't just give me a generic EDM. Like, show me some love. Send me just a message to be like, yo, what's up? What's happening? Because in terms of your audience segmentation, I'm not just an audience member. I'm actually your artist. I'm your lifeline. So, yeah, that's what I think. I hope that answers something.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, these are important things to share and to be heard, because we're all part of the same industry. And we know that all those venues and arts organisations are working really hard, but perhaps they don't or haven't considered how their message might be received by different parts of their community. So I think that's a really, thank you for sharing that point. We have had a question come through on the comments from the Facebook Live. And this is a question for everyone. Just who, in your view, could partner with you as artists to support moving forward in the future? And I imagine you'll each probably have a different answer to this, because you've got different relationships with different organisations and artists. Maybe I'll start with you, Juanita.
Oh, yeah, great question. I mean, again, going back to those 3 events that we've had in Christchurch, and then you had no choice but to look outside your little circle. I mean, there was no choice about it really, and who you got was who you got. But yeah, after the earthquake, I mean, obviously we had to rebuild a city. So what you found is that your creative sector, your health sectors, everybody was kind of talking to each other. And so now we have this growing creative sector, but again, it's kind of mainstream led as well. So those conversations have been really important there. Later on, a little bit later after the earthquakes, we've had these beautiful, you would have seen them, these beautiful projects like Gap Villa and Lives, which is Life in Vacant Spaces, and Little Andromeda as well, which is this beautiful pop-up theatre venue where that has just opened up. So before the earthquake, I had no idea who was in Christchurch. So what that terrible thing did is that it opened you up to things that you didn't know about. I didn't know there were all these dance companies. I didn't know where all these theatre companies were. And with the arrival of Little Andromeda, it took a lot of pressure off artists. So it meant that you didn't have to struggle to find a venue anymore, that you didn't have to struggle so much with marketing and promo or tech and that sort of thing. So it was a space where you could go and just be creative, which I think has sort of happened in COVID, where you have now, because there's no venues or anything like that, you are more likely to be in a development place, which as artists in Christchurch, we got together with the Christchurch City Council and just talked about what do we want as a community. And so we had to have some of those really hard conversations about mainstream and race and all of these sorts of things, because those were the spaces that we were negotiating. So again, partnerships, but it's all kind of grown out of the tragedy. And for me, I guess I wish that we were doing that without the tragedy. And just, I think finally, the other thing that's been really awesome, and Dale, you'll know this, but our Māori theatre company, our Māori theatre industry has been really awesome. Everyone is reaching out. We've had a couple of Zooms just talking about what's available and how do we get all of this information out to people. So our Māori theatre community, like most artists, you're struggling anyway. So connecting up sometimes is just hard. It's sometimes hard to just get on Zoom every week and have these hui over and over again. So again, COVID has sort of brought out this tragedy and has allowed us to connect up. But I think I just want to go back a little bit, and I just want to talk about So what were the things that were important for us? After the earthquake, the biggest thing I think was that you started thinking about land in a really, really different way. When the terrorism attack happened, you started thinking about race in a really different way. I know for a lot of people it was really triggering. And then with COVID now, you're starting to think about globalization in a really different way. So with that sort of on the peripheral, and then building these relationships, you're finding that your relationships are actually fitting the thing that kind of fits you personally. I have found that anyway. Yeah, I hope that answers the question, Doe. I'm creative, we're all creative, so going off on these little tangents all over the place.
Kia ora, Juanita, that's great. And in fact, the Māori theatre community that you were talking about also compiled a Google document with just some information about how to navigate funding opportunities or what's happening out there on the online space or new initiatives Māori theatre companies have put together. So there's a Google Doc out there which has been shared on the Mana Moana Creatives page and also the Aotearoa Arts and Events in COVID-19 Facebook page. But I'll also just check in with PANNZ and include that on their fantastic list of resources and get that put up on their website. Victor, I'll come to you now. Just a question for you about who, in your view, could partner with you as artists or independent artists to support moving forward in the future?
Yeah, you know, my initial reaction to that, and this is a tangent, and I mean, I can only see the four of us. I can't see everyone else watching, and you know, we're all of color, right? So I'm just going to pretend we're having a little conversation, not in mixed company. You know, for a long time, part of me has just wanted. My fantasy has always been for all brown practitioners to just withdraw from the mainstream and just all work together as a block, so that we don't have to go cap in hand. that was one of my little fantasies. I mean, it's interesting for all the talk of the reset, the great reset that people were talking about, or have been talking about in lockdown. I do wonder if that reset will really happen, or if it will just go back to a variation of what already exists. And I think that is one of the dangers of this, that it may just go back to the status quo, because the status quo, let's be honest, doesn't work for a lot of us, right? Because we're not up there helping shape those big decisions. So when you ask me that question, yeah, it's not really, I mean, that because that word mainstream is so loaded, right?
Yeah,
it's actually a euphemism for something else in my head. And it's not to diss the hashtag mainstream organizations outright, but yeah, why do we have to partner with someone to get, I don't know.
Yeah, I definitely hear what you're saying, Victor. It's maybe now is the time for there to be more sovereign organisations that are Māori and Pasifika or diverse led, so that we can partner as artists, independent artists can partner more with them than necessarily always with the mainstream. Although I know that many of you have enjoyed really fantastic projects with organisations like the Auckland Arts Festival or our festivals who've commissioned us, or venues and partners. So we do, that's an important part of what we do. But perhaps we're definitely looking for something more in that space. Alice, I'll come to you on that question now too. Thanks, Victor. Those were great points. As an artist, who do you see that could partner with you to support your work going forward?
I'd like to see, if we're really talking about like the reset, I think for the arts and culture to be siloed within the sector is a gap where we could be working in a truly interdisciplinary, truly intersector way. So I would like to see partnerships coming from the private sector. This is me just thinking on my feet here. So, you know, Ministry of Health, the environment, we could be working more with architects and city planners. We could be inside corporates, dismantling corporate structures. They could be giving us some of their money. You know, systems of patronage needs to shift. So like the old people who give money to the arts heaps, they're going to die and shit. So like, why not start like looking and leveraging off new systems for how we donate and give and be generous to the arts. Yeah, I think for me, the partnership goes beyond just arts organisations, I think, and more about all the other ones. I would like to see those initiatives. Those initiatives are really hard as an independent. You know, I tried it myself, trying to kind of door knock in like stakeholders that people I met on boards once at a party, you know, like, and it's like really bloody hard to do that. So that's, I think, getting like arts organisations acting as matchmakers. Like, I've seen those corporate logos on your foyer. I know that you've got like hookups with, I don't know, Bell Gully or you know, EY or whatever. So I'm kind of some of that. I'd love to see some of that. And I also think I'm talking specifically about private sector, but there's a hunger to bust open their systems too, and I'm sure they'd love to have some artists come in and I don't know, do something. Yeah, I'm not sure.
That's great, Alice. Thank you. It's really exciting to think about new ways that we might be able to shift the systems, because in lots of ways it's so comforting to be able to know a system that has kind of worked in a particular way, and then we just fall back on it. Oh, well, this is how it works. Get the funding, do a show, buy tickets, and everyone comes. But what are the new ways that we can, even for our own practices, what are new ways that we can be working with others to really shift the landscape? We've got another question that's come in, and this one's about money. So we're talking about independent artists and the idea of money. What would that look like, or what could that look like? Is it more money but keep funds project-based, so it's more money for projects because we might not be creating or producing more? Or do we think we need to reinstate things like the pay scheme, or looking into the idea of the universal basic income, which has come up on a few other threads as well? What do we need when it comes to money? Anybody want to volunteer to answer this question? What do you think, Victor?
I've just been doodling down here. Yeah, UBI. There's something in the UBI. Whatever creates greater equity. Whatever the answer to that is, that's the answer to that question. So that is closer towards a wage of some kind rather than project by project. That makes it more equitable for more people. It doesn't quite answer it, but yeah, that's what's in my head.
What do you think, Alice? What do you think about what do independent artists need in terms of money?
I think now is a really good test of what offering people an ongoing residual kind of payment, which, as Victor said, is not tied to projects, which have really output-based kind of outcomes, because the value is in time and you know, and being able to sit deeply inside process and all that kind of stuff. So we're probably, I'd say, testing that right now with what the wage subsidy has enabled for some people to do. And it would be really lovely to almost like there to be a case study that happens afterwards. Ooh, case study, yuck. but you know, like a way of showing that there was value in this period in time where everyone got a little bit of money and everyone did a little bit of process, and in a year's time everyone's art's going to be a little bit better. So I would love to see us take that initiative of the now and see how that might make long-term change for the future. And as Victor said, through not project-based, but ongoing residual payments towards practice. Yeah.
Thanks,
yeah.
Alice. Juanita, do you have any thoughts about money or funding?
I agree with what these ones have said. And I went to a social entrepreneur wānaka and they talked about how it's not really the money, because there's enough money out there. It's what we're doing with that money, how that money is being organised, and how people are organising around the money. So that's an interesting kind of thing for me to think about, because the money is, there's money to be put out. Yeah, the money would help, but I think in Christchurch we also need the resource as well, human or tech or whatever that is. So the money really is only one part, for me anyway, is only one part of the mahi, particularly if we go back to like arts, education, advocacy, which so many of us end up doing. Is that, yeah, you can get paid, but then, you know, if you're the only, for example, the only Māori woman on a board, you could be getting paid a lot of money, but actually where is the support around you in that space as well? So it's just one little, but yes, definitely it's important, and of course we want it. I would love it. I need it. Yeah, but just some other sort of peripheral thoughts, I think, about once you get the money, what then?
And how many people can the money support, or what is the outcome? Don't want to talk about productivity, but
yeah, exactly.
What is the money supporting? Now, I've just got a question for you, all of you, around what might your advice be to emerging freelance artists or emerging independent practitioners, because each of you are, you know, quite, I guess we'd call you in the mid-career would be the description that gets used in your practice. But for some of our recent grads or more emerging freelance independent practitioners, do you have any advice for them at this time?
Yeah,
we'll come to you, Victor.
Just a couple of things, like even if they have to, you know, get a job that is not related to their practice, just to never forget that they are creatives. I think sometimes people struggle with that if they're not, you know, 24/7 being paid to create, that they somehow are not creatives, but they are, and I would just encourage them just to hold on to that. They'll always be creatives. And the other thing, which is a bit of a tangent, is because I've had to do this myself, and I think this applies to everyone, but not just the young, but it's just to be kind to yourself in this period of time, this very uncertain time. That can be incredibly challenging for a lot of people, whatever age they are. But, you know, if you can treat yourself like you would treat one of your best mates and not turn on yourself, I think that's good advice too. That's me. Thanks,
Victor. Juanita, what would your advice be to emerging independent practitioners?
Ooh, first one, please get in touch with me. Yeah, feel free to Facebook me, you'll find me somehow. Find me, I'll find you. If that would help, I think talking to somebody is always really good. Oh, advice. Oh my gosh, I hate advice. It's so mummy, isn't it? You know, and I don't listen to any of my mum's advice. She didn't listen to mine either, by the way. I had to tell her off for leaving the house. I think be really aware of where you put your energy. Be really aware of how you're using your energy. If you have signed up to do a job that says 6 hours, do 6 hours. Don't. I'm speaking from experience here as well. I'm terrible at doing that. Yeah, I think that's the biggest one. And it's always just going back to those three things about what is important to us here in Christchurch, that we have learned from those three tragedies, that the things that are important for us to connect upon and navigate is land, race, and globalisation. What do those things mean to you now? And treat every day like it's a tragedy. Don't wait for the tragedy to happen before you start doing the things that you love. Yeah, that's quite like ethereal, and but yeah, that's how I feel anyway.
Well, thank you, Juanita. I don't know if you can all hear, but the sunny Auckland day has turned into a complete massive storm. And I'm sitting out here in my temporary office in the shed, so the rain is just like belting down. But over to you, Alice. Alice, what would your advice be to emerging freelance and independent artists at this time?
I also tautoko what both Juanita and Victor have said. I think those are great pieces of advice. I would take those on myself. I guess it's like that for me. It's that binary between saying yes and also saying no, and I think they're both really important skills to learn. And I'm still learning how to say no. And I think both of those things are okay. And there's no better or worse version of that. And to deeply scrutinize what it means to exercise your ability to say that to people. And that also includes the grace that you have when you receive yes and no from others. So like if someone says no to you, there are many ways that you can look at that. And so I just encourage us to investigate deeply what that is. Also, I was going to say, now's a good time to read that book that sits on your bookshelf decoratively. Or like the thousands of tabs that you have open in your browser. Maybe it's time to bookmark them and close them. Or go through that inbox, because there's lots of unread, emails or idioms that you need to unsubscribe from.
Well, thank you, Alice. We've just had a comment that's come in about your comment, Victor, around everyone, you're always a creative even when you have another job. And someone's just made a comment that the Creative New Zealand Emergency Relief Grant, you need to prove that the majority of your income comes from your arts practice. So that's another one of those tensions there where we are saying, well, you are an artist, but actually if you can't prove this, it becomes just another hurdle for people at this time. I think given that it's raining and we've come through many of our questions, I might just come to you each for a closing thought. And I'll start with you, Juanita. If there's anything you'd like to share with us to close.
I just noticed this question as well about maintaining physical distancing that is not online, but you're still able to sell tickets, make money from. Just a little thing about that. I guess for me, where I've been working with Danny Lee, who's a circus performer down here, and Symphony Orchestra, and that's exactly the question that we're looking at the moment, is how we're going to carry on this work that we've been doing. So we're looking at the different levels and we're planning around those levels, but really I think what it's going to be is that it's going to be probably, hopefully, we'll be able to have 4 or 5 people in a space, and that we can work with schools, with kura, and work on developing that narrative. And so our funders have been really great. They've said, let us know what's happening and let's work together on this. So we're not focused on selling the tickets, although they are still being sold. We're focused on the development. I know that probably doesn't really answer your question very well, but that's one little thing that I'm doing down here in Christchurch. And final thinking, I think for me, I'm really interested in Indigenous storytelling. It's my passion, it's my love, it's the thing that I just, I find myself thinking about all the time. And one thing I've noticed from being overseas and then coming back to Aotearoa and looking at it, the way we tell stories, is that we're really we have a really strong platform to grow these very interconnected, multidisciplinary, high quality artworks together. But it means that we need to have some really difficult conversations about who we are as a nation, where we want to go, and what art means to us as a country as well. So I think that's what I'm driving on. And if you are driving on that as well and you want to have a kōrero about that, again, please get in touch with me. Really, if it means you just want to reach out and tell me how horrible your bubble's been today because the kids have popped it 40 times, I am driving that with you. So please, yeah. And he tino mihi atu kia koutou. He whakatau ki kaitahu mō tātou a mō ka uri a muri ake nei, which means it's for us and our children after us. So yeah, I might have to work my ass off at the moment, but if it means that my grandkids don't have to work quite as hard, then I'm feeling that and I love that.
Kia ora, Juanita, thank you. Alice, you've got some closing thoughts to share with us.
I think I've been thinking, I think about a lot of things. I usually say that as a preface to when I'm about to say something tangential. But I've been thinking about accessibility and how we've had to very quickly problem solve ways that we can connect and engage with each other and the kind of the tyranny of distance. But I'm also aware that there are people who have been advocating for new ways of working because of the way we privilege the live event and the way that people are able to gain access to those live events. And I would like to think that beyond this, we can continue to think about ways people can virtually connect and engage with work. And like I jumped into this call, some New York theatre practitioners, and they were all, and like it's a real tragedy what's happening in New York at the moment, but they were all kind of like crying about how like live events have been lost and like they don't have any meaning. And I was like, yo, I'm from New Zealand, like I went to drama school in New Zealand. I've never seen a Complicity show. I've only watched it on a screen. Like when I was doing my sculpture degree, I've only seen Pollock in a slide this big, you know, like actually there's some validity in the way in which we document art and the way that it is accessed, and we can't just I think so that's what I'm thinking about, and how that can continue to evolve.
Kia ora, Alice, thank you. Yes, there's lots of opportunities and ideas around how this foray into the digital space might impact even our live work, or create more access and opportunity for others. Thank you. Victor, coming to you for your final thoughts of the day.
You know, last week I was speaking to a mate up in Auckland, and he was like, liquidate all your assets ASAP. And I was like, I'm in the arts, I don't have any assets to liquidate. And he was banging on about the pretty much inevitable depression that is on the horizon, and how that's going to be a really tricky time for a lot of people. And I think that's right, yes, and it will be. But the thing I'd like to close on is that there must always be hope. So that is certainly what I'm holding on to in this great big question mark that we are living through, because we're living through history. There must always be hope. That's me.
Kia ora, Victor, thank you. That's a really beautiful note to close on. There must always be hope. A huge thank you to all of you out there who've joined us today on Facebook Live and YouTube, and to also thank you to everybody who may watch this later on as well. A massive thank you, ka nui te mihi ki a koutou, to our panellists for joining us today, Juanita, Hepi, Alice, Canton and Victor Rodger. So lovely to speak with you and to hear your ideas about how we might navigate this long road to the future. PANNZ in Auckland Live will continue with our online hui series. The next hui will be on Monday the 11th of May at 11 AM. I hope to see you all there. And just on a final note, I wanted to share that tonight at 6 PM Tempo Dance Festival is launching its digital festival. There'll be a performance at 6 PM by Kura Te Ua, followed by a full program reveal of the first season of Tempo Dance Festival, which is entitled Whatu Manawa. So if you have a chance, please do tune in to this exciting development for Tempo Dance Festival. And I'll just close our session with a karakia today. Kia hora te marino, kia whakapapa paunamu te moana, kia tere te kai rohi rohi I mua I tō huarahi. Thank you again for joining us today. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā rā tātou katoa.